All right, let's get right into it. Today, we are digging into one of the biggest changes in how we all work and live. I'm talking about the massive move away from the classic full time job and into this new world of flexible, on demand work, and more importantly, how it changes the way we all get paid. So here's the big question, right? Is that old 9 to 5 job actually a thing of the past? For, generations, that's what everyone was shooting for, that stable, full-time gig. But if you look around today, with the rise of the gig economy and this whole flexible workforce, it really feels like we're in the middle of a huge, huge change. Now, to really get a handle on this, we need to know the lingo. And the official term for this new workforce is contingent workers. The key phrase there is no contract for ongoing employment. It's pretty simple, really. Unlike a traditional employee who expects to be there for the long haul, a contingent worker's job is, by its very nature, temporary. So who are these contingent workers exactly? Well, it's not just one type of person. You can almost think of them as the key players in this new economy, and they come in a few different flavors. Let's meet the team. Okay, first up, we've got the one we all know best, the part-time employee. This is, without a doubt, the biggest and most common group in the entire flexible workforce. What's really fascinating here is that there are two totally different kinds of part-time workers. You've got your voluntary folks, people who choose to work fewer hours for whatever reason, maybe school or family. But then you have the involuntary group. These are people who want a full-time job but just can't find one. And that group is not small. Back in 2018, over 5.3 million people were in that exact situation. All right, on to our next player, the temporary or temp worker. A lot of us have probably been a temp or worked with one. They're usually hired through an agency to fill a very specific short-term spot. For companies, these workers are incredibly strategic. They can cover for someone on leave, help a store get through the crazy holiday season, or, and this is a big one, they can be a way to try before you buy for a full-time role. The big catch for the worker, though, they almost never get access to company benefits. Now, here's a setup that's a little less known but really interesting: leased employees. And this is a bit different than just being a temp. So with this model, you could be working at, say, a big hotel every single day, but you're not actually an employee of the hotel. You're an employee of a leasing agency. That agency handles your paycheck, your benefits, your W-2, all of it. It's a way for companies to basically outsource their entire HR department for certain roles. And that brings us to our final player, the one that's basically become the poster child for this whole new flexible economy: the independent contractor, the freelancer, the consultant. These folks are really the entrepreneurs of the workforce. They're running their own show, bringing in very specific skills. Think graphic design, coding, high-level business strategy to companies on a project-by-project basis. This right here, this is the engine of what everybody now calls the gig economy. Okay, so we've met all the players. But why? Why has this flexible workforce just exploded? The answer, my friends, is all about a fundamental trade-off. It's about flexibility for the company versus security for the worker. And believe me, it is a multi-billion-dollar trade-off. So let's just ask the question head on. What is really pushing this massive shift? Well, it really just boils down to money. And when you see the numbers, they're pretty staggering. First, just look at the raw hourly pay. The data shows your average full-time worker is making about $26.69 an hour, and the average part-timer, just $14.14. That is a massive difference right out of the gate. But, and this is so important, as big as that wage gap is, it's not the whole story. It's not even close to being the biggest piece of the puzzle for a company. The real story, the billion-dollar driver here, is benefits.
Just look at this number. For every single hour a full-time employee is on the clock, the company is spending, on average, another $12.72 on their benefits. We're talking health insurance, paid time off, retirement plans, all of it.
Now let's compare that to a part-time worker. That cost absolutely plummets, down to just $3.72 an hour. The savings for the company are just astronomical. And when you see it laid out on a chart like this, it just hits you. That massive canyon between the two bars, that is the main reason. That is the economic engine driving this whole shift to a more contingent workforce. The lower wages combined with the drastically lower benefit costs, the financial logic for businesses is just crystal clear. Okay, so this economic reality brings up a really crucial legal question. Because the rights you have and what a company owes you, it all comes down to how the law classifies you.
And this is not just some academic exercise. It has huge, real world consequences for your taxes, for your access to benefits, for your legal protections. So, how does the law actually decide, are you an employee or are you a contractor?
Well, the courts often fall back on something called the common law test, and it all boils down to one word: control. They ask some pretty basic questions. Who gets to say how and when the work gets done? Who's providing the tools? The laptop, the software. And how do you get paid? Is it by the hour, which looks more like an employee, or is it by the project, which points towards being a contractor? So we've looked at the players, we've looked at the economics, we've looked at the legal side of things, but is this all just a temporary fad? All the signs are pointing to a big no. Let's talk about the powerful forces that are making sure this trend is here to stay. See, it's so important to get that this isn't just a reaction to one thing. We've got these huge long-term forces pushing this forward. When the economy gets rough, companies use contingent workers to cut costs. In a global marketplace, it helps them compete against countries with way lower labor costs. And honestly, it just fits the way our economy works now. We're much more about services and projects than the old factory assembly line. And all of this brings us to one final thought. That old idea of having one job for your whole life? It's fading fast. It's being replaced by this much more fluid mix of jobs and projects and gigs. The challenge, and maybe the opportunity, for all of us is figuring out how to navigate it. So the question we want to leave you with is this. As that line between a job and a gig gets blurrier and blurrier, how are you going to define your career?